It's a LaMelo Ball themed edition of Locked On Hornets. We recap this weekend's results and look back at LaMelo Ball compared to other Charlotte Hornets greats. That's all today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, brought to you by Bet Online. There might be less football being played, but betonline.net has way more odds and info for this playoff season. From scores, total player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, Bet Online is the number one spot for all things NFL betting in 2022 and NBA betting as well. Hockey, boxing, UFC odds, so much to get involved in with Bet Online. The fastest and the easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. Bet Online, where the game starts. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. We appreciate them, and we appreciate you for joining us here on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Catch us wherever you get your pods. Make it your first listen. We appreciate that as well. I'm on Twitter at Walker Mail, Doug Branson LOH. Find the show handle on Twitter and on YouTube at Locked On Hornets. LaMelo Ball themed edition, Doug. That's what happens when your lone Charlotte Hornets representative is doing some big things all-star weekend. Rising Stars Challenge, check. All-Star game, good box score. Donning the purple suit after it all. He fit as much as anybody in All-Star weekend, and I can't say that I'm surprised.
LaMelo! I'm pumped, man. I am pumped. I'm way more excited than I was for anything on All-Star Saturday night. That was a huge disappointment.
Nice.
But what wasn't a disappointment, Walker, was the performance of Charlotte's number one star, LaMelo Ball, doing what we've seen him do all season, honestly, which is make the most of limited minutes. He wanted the ball in his hands. He was aggressive, scoring, passing. It was a beautiful thing to watch, and I'm proud.
It was phenomenal to see, man. 7 of 11 is his box score, right? So 7 of 11 from the field, 4 of 8 from 3. So shooting the ball well in this game. 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Even had 3 steals, playing a little bit of defense in the All-Star game. LaMelo bringing it there. 0 turnovers. Ends up with 18 points. That's actually the third most points scored for Team Durant. Played in the closing time when the fourth quarter actually had some kind of semblance of effort from both of these teams.
Don't make me like you, Eric Spoelstra. Do not make me like you, Eric Spoelstra.
You called for him to be fired, and now it's a very love-hate relationship because then he plays LaMelo.
Then I tweeted hire Spoelstra.
Yeah,
I tweeted fire Spoelstra when he held LaMelo out for most of the third quarter, and then I tweeted hire Spoelstra as he held him in for almost the entire fourth quarter.
That's right. LaMelo playing at the end, hit a later three-pointer in this game too, and was on the court during the closing seconds.
Not my favorite stat. Not my favorite box score stat, by the way.
Yeah, talk to me. What's your favorite?
My favorite box score stat was that he was 4 of 8 from 3, and Devin Booker, or as I like to call him on this show, Devin Snooker, because he's snookering everyone into thinking that he's an elite NBA player, which he is not, was 2 of 9 from 3. So LaMelo Ball had a better three-point percentage in the All-Star game than Devin Snooker.
Yeah, second most three-point scored too.
Devin.
Joel Embiid was 5 of 8 from the perimeter and 36 points, and then it was LaMelo right after that who had the second most threes.
Look, if LaMelo Ball wanted to win that All-Star game, and he didn't, and he only has one person to blame, and that's Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid lost the All-Star game for Team Durant.
Yeah, because he just kept.
Well, Kevin Durant
shots.
lost it for them as well by being injured, not playing, but also Joel Embiid.
Well, but wait, Kevin Durant, if he played, then I guess it would have been LaMelo getting in, and then Jarrett Allen being on the outs because LaMelo was the first alternate. So still, Kevin Durant, if he plays, we have to wait a little longer for LaMelo to get into the All-Star game. But
okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. That ruins what I just said, but that's okay. But Joel Embiid lost
Jarrett Allen was the latter one in. So eventually we wait longer. Either way, LaMelo was awesome. Sure. Look, and we got to see the Rising Stars Challenge. Not as much from LaMelo in that one. That was more so everybody else kind of doing their own thing, right? Like, I wonder how much, LaMelo.
I wonder why he played. Like, why did he play?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he just wanted to take take advantage, or maybe he had already committed or something. But it just seems like once you make the All-Star game, it should just be like, well, I'll just skip the Rising Stars game. Of course, I think the moment that everyone if they remember anything, they're going to remember Jayshawn Tate. LaMelo going for the steal and Jayshawn Tate crossing him up a little bit and going to the hoop for the win.
Right.
So that was a little bit of a disappointing moment, but I think LaMelo wipes all of that away with his performance in the All-Star game.
Well, yeah, and you have to wonder too, right? Like it was right after a double overtime loss to the Miami Heat, and then you're seeing LaMelo ball play immediately. He had to get to Cleveland right away. And so right after that, he actually does show up and, plays a little bit, but clearly the All-Star game, that's what we're all paying attention to. Awesome to see him there, fit as much as anybody. Anything else from LaMelo Ball's performance that you wanted to discuss, or just looking at him compared to everybody else, right? I mean, his team would go and they would lose. LeBron would hit the final jumper, 163 to 160.
What a game. What
yeah,
a
it was
perfect
awesome.
All-Star game.
It was an awesome ending, too. And what's cool is that LaMelo was on the court for that.
Yeah, the Elam ending has saved the All-Star game. It has made the All-Star game relevant. Probably the only – I mean, I know there are actual stakes in the MLB All-Star game, but I don't even know.
There used to be, yeah.
Oh, they took them away?
They did. They took away so home field advantage for the World Series.
It's clear I only watch basketball.
Yeah, well, it's fine. Nobody.
But
cares.
anyway, so the Elam ending actually makes this All-Star game relevant. It makes it fun. I was cheering for both. Like I cheered for Steph Curry, who that's going to be the story, right?
Sure.
The story from this game. LaMelo was sort of a sub story. But the story from this game is going to be Steph Curry almost breaking the points record, breaking the 3-point record. And I wanted him to hit the game winner, and props to LeBron for giving the ball up. But then LeBron hitting it in Cleveland after he's making all these little sort of notions about maybe going back to Cleveland or going to play with his son, like doing the great LeBron trolling that you always love from the All-Star weekend.
Love it.
But to hit that shot, it was amazing. And so if LaMelo's team was going to lose in the All-Star game, let it be like that. My big takeaway from LaMelo Ball's All-Star experience is that, one, he took the game seriously, I think. Not like Kobe Bryant level serious, but he was in crunch time and he was playing seriously, playing hard defense, trying to cover Steph Curry. It was tough in that game. And two, he was surrounded by stars and yet made his presence known. And I think that's important for his career trajectory overall. And I think the third thing is that he was in crunch time and he wanted the ball. He didn't necessarily get the ball. There were other guys that took sort of the game in their hands, Levine and other players, and Joel Embiid, as I mentioned, who lost the All-Star game for LaMelo Ball and Team Durant. But LaMelo wanted it. And I think that, again, just shows like his confidence level sky high. He wants to be part of the moment. He wants to be a star in this league. And that's super exciting if you're a fan of the Charlotte Hornets.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was as involved as almost anybody in this game for Team Durant because he played 22 minutes. The guys that played more, Devin Booker, your boy, DeJounte Murray played 27 minutes. Joel Embiid
I liked Murray.
31.
Murray was good.
Yeah, Murray was, and he was the beneficiary of the between the legs pass on that transition bucket. So that was cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. That might be, awesome. I mean, if you're talking highlight reel, again, the story is Steph. And so when you go back and think about that game, it's going to be the Steph game, right? But I think that LaMelo highlight play would make the overall highlight reel for the All-Star game.
Well, I think it made the rounds for like your Sports Center accounts, anybody following the All-Star game. They made sure they tweeted that out in real time. And you bring up the Steph part of things where LaMelo was actually guarding him after the game in true LaMelo fashion. He was asked about it. Hey, what took place when you actually started to guard Steph Curry? And that's when he came off of his hot streak because everybody wanted him to break the record and he should have done it. And then it just didn't happen. He went so cold, eventually only scores 50. So LaMelo was asked about it. There's somebody that is in the background. I don't know who it is. And then he daps him up mid-question. And then he comes back. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I was just, playing basketball. I was just trying to guard Steph Curry. Oh, he didn't say anything.
He's not going to give you anything yet.
No,
he's not going to give you anything yet.
Well, and this is the other thing real quickly before we start to compare his box scores to other Hornets debut All-Star game box scores, which is going to be fun to go to here in just a second. But like LaMelo on the All-Star stage, with everybody paying attention, LaMelo is enough of a star to where he has enough prowess nationally. He has enough play, right? There's tons of people tweeting out his plays for the Charlotte Hornets, tweeting out his neon yellow suit in the debut.
Ooh, I mean, that wasn't the only one. He brought the drip the entire week. I can't wait till Fire and Fizzle because it might just be an entire LaMelo Ball edition.
The purple suit, I was feeling it. But like, I feel like it's not introduced. It's not the right word. But there were just so many eyeballs on All-Star Weekend, and LaMelo showed that he fit. He showed that he had the fit. He showed kind of who he is right now. And I am interested in how LaMelo's press game, interview game goes on as his career goes on. You know, like, is this just this is how LaMelo is and he's young? Is this he's always going to be like this? Is this he'll start to give you a little more as his career goes on? But everybody was not introduced to LaMelo, but there was a spotlight on him more so because it's All-Star Weekend and everybody's kind of watching him. And I think overall, big thumbs up, positive for everything that kind of was involved with him.
Yeah, he needs an accomplishment. He needs like a legitimate, like a playoff series win. Like he needs an accomplishment before, like, I think it would be weird to see him making big, bold statements about like locking down Steph Curry, although I would love to make that the narrative. Let's make that the narrative. I want Locked On NBA to tweet us out saying, LaMelo, here, I'll do the quote for them. LaMelo Ball locked down Steph Curry and prevented him from getting the points record, and that's a fact. There, I did it. I got that on for Locked On NBA.
Put that as the thumbnail for this.
But we can say that. We can say that. And I think it's important that LaMelo doesn't – I think it's cool that he doesn't go out and do that kind of thing before he gets the accomplishment.
Yeah, and you even still get to see his personality where everybody asks him, you know, who is your favorite player growing up. On the court you get to see it, but even off of it, what you see his answer all the time is of when, you know, who's your favorite player? It's LaMelo. I saw young LaMelo. I was watching his highlights the other day, and I'm not gonna lie, he was doing pretty well. Like, you get to see that fun nature of LaMelo too. So good stuff from him this All-Star Weekend. We're not done talking about him for the next two segments. I want to compare his box score in the All-Star debut compared to other draftees for the Charlotte Hornets and what they did in their first All-Star game. This is the time of year that a lot of people have pretty much given up on New Year's resolutions. Don't be that person. And if you need some help, go to Built.com and get you some Built bars. If you haven't tried the Puffs or even the Staples, Puffs are great. They have this protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat. They're a candy bar. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. And it's high in protein and high in fiber, but low in sugar, low in calories, low in carbs. It's good for you despite being so tasty. It doesn't make sense, and yet you still need to go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 when you do so and get 15% off of your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order when you use promo code LOCKED15 at Built.com. Go get you some Built bars. We'll talk more LaMelo Ball coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are listening to the Locked On Hornets podcast.
And Doug, don't you have an Eldon Campbell, like, stuffed animal type thing?
Yes, I do. I got it at the last regular season home game that they had before they left for New Orleans.
I love me some Eldon Campbell, but is that the guy?
They were clearing everything out of the house because it was whatever they gave to the fans that night, they didn't have to take with them to New Orleans.
Get more Hornets analysis on LockedOnHornets.com.
Thank you for making Locked On Hornets your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Doug, you have done extensive research comparing LaMelo Ball's All-Star debut box score compared to the other debut for Charlotte Hornets All-Star games where guys have been there the first time, what they did. So why don't you just feed us all of those tasty stats and give us the content of all your hard research?
So let's remind everyone of what LaMelo's box score was. 22 minutes played, 7 of 11 from the field, 4 of 8 from 3, 18 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. So I went all the way back to 1993 to find the debut of Larry Johnson. I did Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning, Baron Davis, and Kemba Walker. I'm not including Glenn Rice in this. I'm only looking at players similar to LaMelo that were drafted by the Charlotte Hornets and then went on to make the All-Star game. So let's do a little screen share here so everybody can take part, at least those that are on YouTube. Thanks for joining us on YouTube, by the way, youtube.com/Locked On Hornets podcast. So here's the box score of Larry Johnson's debut. This lists him as a starter. He was very popular in 1993 to get the All-Star bid in his second year, like LaMelo, and doing it as a starter. But you can see a little bit of an underwhelming debut. 2 of 6 from the field, 16 minutes played, only 4 points, and really more surprising, only 4 rebounds. Not a lot of missed shots, I guess, in the All-Star game. But what do you think about this debut?
Well, I mean, for me, it's interesting more so that you mentioned his popularity, because I'm actually not surprised, right? Like, this is a guy coming off of the run for UNLV. This is a crazy popular team, the best player on that Rebels team.
Big national commercials.
I mean, Larry Johnson being popular. I remember right when we did the top 30 Hornets list, which I saw a comment in YouTube. You talked about it. Can we do a top 25? And everybody hated the list because that's why lists are made. And people got mad at Larry Johnson being 3 compared to Alonzo being 2. And a lot of that has to do with Larry Johnson's popularity. And, this is somebody that stayed here for a while, right, with the Hornets, but he was popular as soon as he comes in because he was such a sensation in college basketball. Didn't make it his rookie year, but as soon as he's eligible, right, kind of has that foundation, gets in his second year, he's voted as an all-star starter. So, yeah, I mean, box score, not the greatest game from him, but still, I'm not surprised to see him get in immediately as a top 5 guy.
And, of course, these were the days, East-West. There was no all-star draft. And I think, too, there was a center and 2 forwards, right? They didn't do – I wonder. I have to look that up. But, Shaquille O'Neal at the center spot, I just wonder, like, if it was indeed that, maybe Patrick Ewing gets in over Larry Johnson, but I don't know. If how the voting went, I have to look that up.
Detlef Schrempf is the best name on this, by the way.
I don't know. Mark Price have a game, 19 points, 6 of 9 from 3. Nice 3-point percentage there, 6 of 11 from the field.
Former Great Charlotte 49er basketball coach, Charlotte Hornets shooting coach. A lot of ties with the Carolinas from Mark Price. Excellent game, sir.
All right, let's move on to Alonzo Mourning's NBA All-Star Game playing debut, which was 1995. Did not play in the 94 All-Star Game. 1995, both Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning participating in that game, but both participating off the bench. The starters for the East, Penny Hardaway, Scottie Pippen. By the way, Scottie not showing up to the 75th anniversary. I feel like he got voted off the island. Everybody was like, You know what, Scottie? Probably best if you stay home.
Hey, what's happened to him, man? I mean, I've got.
No, I don't. He's on solid.
No, you're right. Like, I hate all of that. I could talk about the Last Dance documentary, the Scottie Michael relationship, for about 5 episodes, a whole week dedicated to it because it's so interesting to me. But you're right. Like, Scottie doesn't show up, and it does feel like he got voted off the island.
So Larry Johnson, another disappointing All-Star game here. 7 points, 2 of 3, wasn't very active in 20 minutes. Alonzo, in his debut, gets 19 minutes, 4 of 9 from the field, 8 rebounds, that's nice, 1 assist, 1 block, and 10 points. So, and you're off the bench, not bad. But
5 personal fouls. How about that from Alonzo?
How do you
coming
do
in
that?
There, hacking everybody.
Well, and LaMelo, mentioning that, like LaMelo got 4 personal fouls in the Rising Stars game, which I found honestly one of the more impressive stats of the NBA All-Star Weekend. How do you manage 4 fouls? Well, but he stayed out of foul trouble in the All-Star game, and that's important.
Well, but the hilarious part is too, there were 2 personal fouls on Team Durant. LaMelo accounted for one of them. Okay. There's only 2. That's how it happened. He stayed out of trouble, but yeah, still that's
got some
LaMelo,
stuff to clean up. There's no doubt about that. But that's okay. This is a happy LaMelo show. We're not going to get into that. We're celebrating LaMelo.
That's okay.
Dana Barros, by the way, Vin Baker, Tyrone Hill.
Great.
That's
names.
One of those random names, random Eastern Conference names of All-Star past. But okay, so Alonzo Mourning, okay debut, not spectacular. Shall we move on, or do you have anything else?
Well, I mean, with Alonzo, maybe we can. That's probably more so for the legacy stuff I've got on Alonzo, but he does come into the league immediately phenomenal. Like Larry, he didn't even take much time to cook. He was really good his rookie year, just didn't get in because it's so hard to be voted as an All-Star your first season as even a good player. But Alonzo, right off the rip, averaging 20 points, being one of the better defensive players in the league. And so if anybody could have gotten in as a Charlotte Hornet his first season, it was Zoe, but second season.
And I think he did. This is what I was looking up. I think he did make it his first season.
Are you sure?
And let me look. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to look it up live on the show here.
I don't think he did, because I was looking this up to talk about.
Then Google got me wrong, I think.
If you just,
all right, we'll look it up live on the show here.
Well, and I guess for me, I only went to reference, right, and then it didn't have the star.
Okay,
so.
You're right. All right. Oh, you're right. Okay, so yes, he did not. He made it his second year, but didn't play, and then he made it his third year and played.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's where I got confused. Okay, yes, you're right.
There we go. Anyway, this is real time operation for the Locked On Hornets podcast. The next one is B Diddy, right?
The next one is Baron Davis. Let's scroll down here to the Eastern Conference numbers. He makes it to the All-Star game, but only pulls in 13 minutes, 2 points, 0 of 3 from 3, 1 of 5 from the field. So one of the more disappointing performances. And of course, I don't know if this was the year that he did the blindfold, but there was probably there were probably eye holes in the blindfold. But Alonzo Mourning also in this All-Star game as a reserve for Miami this time, 6 of 7 from the field, 13 points. Paul Pierce off the bench, 19 points. Tracy McGrady off the bench, 24 points.
This is our era, right? Like
what the heck was with this game?
Serious.
Look at this game. The starters, no starter in the East this season in 2002 had over 10 points or 10 or more points.
The Washington appearance for MJ. Yeah. This is
4 of 13 in the All-Star game. Woof.
This is like the passing of the guard All-Star game. This is Michael.
This was I mean, other than Iverson, I don't love this lineup. Iverson, Jordan, Mutombo, Kidd, and Antoine Walker
as a starter. Antoine. I love it though. I love the shimmy, man. T-Mac coming in, Pierce. Like, this is the era that would kind of usher us in a little bit. With
that
some
big
of these
three
names.
there, that big three off the bench.
The only
Grady Pierce,
and this kind of goes into the legacy stuff too. We'll talk about next segment, but this would be the only All-Star appearance for Baron Davis in a Charlotte Hornet uniform. Right after this, that's when they would leave for New Orleans, and we'd never see him do anything well for the city again, as far as being a Charlotte Hornet. And so sad to see, because Diddy was a fan favorite for sure, still is.
Okay, final one here. Kemba Walker. All-Star game debut in 2017, also as an injury replacement. He got a lot of minutes, 20 minutes in this game, 3 of 6 from the field, 1 of 4 from 3, 7 points, 6 assists, which was nice off the bench, 3 rebounds, 1 offensive rebound. That's crazy. But 7 points. I remember this debut, and I remember coming on the show and saying it was so great to see Kemba in the game. It just felt like the moment was a little big for him. It was like he was just passive. He was willing to say, all right, I don't need to shoot a ton. I'm going to deliver to other people. And that was strange on a national stage, because locally we had been used to Kemba Walker being the guy offensively.
Well, and I wonder, I don't know if it says there who won All-Star MVP, but Kyrie Irving had 22 points and 14 assists. The next two on the list, it was DeMar and Kemba, who had 6 assists.
Oh, I'll tell you who won MVP. This was the year that Anthony Davis he set the points record at 52, and he won the All-Star
That's right.
MVP.
There you go. Well, then Anthony Davis would go on to win that MVP. But Kyrie Irving was good in this one, and then Kemba, you're right, he was a little more passive. Did have the assists going more so than the points did. Didn't shoot a bad percentage. But this one too, like, the thing to note with Kemba is that it obviously took him a while to get to his first All-Star game. Baron Davis was the later of the 3 beforehand that we talked about. He got in his 3rd season. Zoe and LJ got in their 2nd year. And Kemba is more of the story where he has the longevity to be the best Charlotte Hornet of all time. And it took a while. He wasn't an immediate success. It took a while, but after that, he got, I think, is it 3 All-Star appearances with Charlotte, or is it just 2 with Charlotte? I either way, he had multiple with the Hornets. And,
he had 3. Kemba?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had 3 with Charlotte and 1 with Boston.
That's what I thought. So yeah, so he'd have 3 All-Star appearances with Charlotte, which is great. And it was like his 5th season, the first time he actually.
And Larry Johnson only 2 All-Star appearances.
Yeah. Weird. And Zoe
So,
only two. With
so the
Hornets.
question I think is going to be an easy one to answer to kind of close things out. But LaMelo Ball,
Clearly.
was it the best debut, All-Star game debut in Charlotte Hornets history?
Clearly. I mean, those were
Yes.
kind of weak scores. I mean, to be honest with you.
I surprised myself with the research. I assumed that Larry or Alonzo or somebody would have had. I knew they probably came off the bench, but I thought, they would have a huge debut. Now, of course, Glenn Rice won MVP in a Hornets uniform. We did not include him or Eddie Jones because we just wanted to look contextually at players that were drafted by Charlotte and then debuted in the All-Star game. So let me take that back. So 4 players that were drafted by Charlotte, was that the greatest debut in Hornets history?
Yeah, and I still clearly, right? Zoe comes off the bench, doesn't do anything special. LJ didn't do anything crazy special. If you look at some of the other guys that you think might have gotten to an All-Star game, Jamal Mashburn doesn't get in the All-Star game until a New Orleans appearance the year after they left. We're talking about other guys that you mentioned that came in not being drafted, but being a part of the Bob Bass trade chain, right? Where you had Eddie Jones coming in. That was after Glenn Rice came in. That was in exchange for Alonzo. So, just some different things there, but really cool to see some of those box score debuts. And clearly, LaMelo Ball had the best debut of anybody drafted by Charlotte. It's not even close. And it was a good game, too. Like, let's not sell it to the point where it was only because the players weren't very good in their debut. LaMelo played legitimately well and was in crunch time, at least, for game deciding stuff.
Yeah, and actually, Glenn Rice's debut as a Charlotte Hornet in the All-Star game, he only scored 7 points in 15 minutes in 1996. It wouldn't be until one of his subsequent All-Star games that he would win MVP. So I could throw him in there, but we were really just looking at players that were drafted by the Charlotte Hornets, and I think LaMelo's All-Star game certainly stands out among that list of players.
All right, let's talk about LaMelo's legacy, the start to his legacy compared to some of those other players, very similar to what we just did, but not before we talk about Bet Online. Football, it might be over for the season, but basketball, it's full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. It remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, news this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's talk Hornets legacies coming up next. Locked On Hornets podcast.
This is Locked On Hornets.
So if you don't believe in the moon landing, then what would you say is the greatest human achievement?
I think the greatest achievement of all time, and I think it's Vince Carter doing 360s clockwise rather
really
than counterclockwise.
I've tried it. It's really tough.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
So we took a look at some of the debuts for some of these Hornets and a lot of really special names, Doug. Anytime we go down the list of the best players to ever don the purple and teal, it always comes down to longevity when we talk about the legacy, because LJ is the best Hornet that fits that mold outside of Kemba. Kemba took the reign as the best Charlotte Hornet of all time. He still is that, considering all of the accomplishments that he achieved and how long he stayed here. There is this persona about him too, where he's just an all-time NBA good guy, right? Like, he is an ambassador for the franchise, as well as giving you some on-court stuff, but not the best talented player to ever wear a Hornets uniform. You can go to a Glenn Rice if you wanted to. You can go to a LJ if you wanted to. Alonzo probably gave us the best 3-year stretch we've ever seen. He was amazing as soon as he comes into the league. First year, 20 points, averaging close to 10 rebounds, becomes one of the best defensive players immediately, right? In fact, Doug, if you look at the athletics list that they just released of the top 75 players of all time, Alonzo made the list. And I think he was somewhere in the 60s, like 68, something like that. He's the only player that had any true affiliation of really good play in that jersey. Robert Parrish was on that list, I believe. But obviously only, he was here with the Twilight. So you see Alonzo having the best 3-year stretch. And at the beginning, it was great, but then he bounces. bounces with a sour taste in your mouth and he goes and plays for the Miami Heat, that's the team he's most known for. Alonzo still has the best moment in Charlotte Hornets history, right? Hitting that shot against the Boston Celtics. So that's the guy you look to as far as just a best stretch in Hornets history. Glenn Rice was great. LJ was awesome. Kemba was great and became the best Hornet of all time. My point being, LaMelo is checking the boxes off as much as he can to become the best Charlotte Hornet of all time. Getting an all-star appearance in just your second year with the team, being a first alternate counts. There's no caveats. Like he's doing this immediately as a national sensation. You have a lot of control over his contract. It would take a LaMelo, I want out badly type of thing for him to leave this organization. So you can kind of take care of some of that longevity issue. We don't expect him to leave next year by any means. Already 3 years would mean he's right up there with some of the other Hornets greats. Like, my point being, it's a pretty easy path to see him become the best Charlotte Hornet of all time. And that's interesting to say for a guy that's just in his second year.
Yeah, I think certainly one of the most talented Charlotte Hornets ever is already on the table. He's not one of the best athletes, I think, that the Hornets have ever had. It's just I associate skill and talent with LaMelo, but not necessarily like just raw athleticism. The thing that made Alonzo special that I think LaMelo is going to have to compensate for with both longevity and then actual just accomplishments with the team is that Alonzo did incredible things on both ends of the floor. And I don't think LaMelo is necessarily a bad defender. And he certainly has the steals, the ability to steal the basketball, sort of an otherworldly ability to anticipate where the ball is. But the stats aren't necessarily like eye-popping. But the blocks stat for Alonzo was just eye-popping. And it was game-changing what he could do on the defensive end of the floor. And I don't think you can necessarily say that for LaMelo Ball. A lot of what excites us about LaMelo, although, again, recognizing the defensive talents that he has, a lot of what excites us about LaMelo Ball is on the offensive end of the floor and his playmaking ability and his surprising ability to shoot the basketball. Though it has been somewhat inconsistent this year, it has come back and he's playing well. So that's where I think he has some catching up to do, and I think he can compensate for that by longevity and by accomplishing actual like playoffs type of things that Alonzo, because he wasn't here for very long, wasn't able to accomplish.
Well, and that's the point, right? Like you go to other franchise best players and they have the accomplishments. Oh, do you remember when so-and-so led us to this significant feat in franchise history? He also has at least 5 all-star appearances in that jersey. He also is one of the more talented players that we've seen the last decade whenever they're having this conversation. And you just can't check all those boxes off as a Charlotte Hornets fan. Like, that's what's made this franchise so difficult. Franchises that you could consider worse than Charlotte in the NBA. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they have Kevin Garnett. The Sacramento Kings, they have Chris Webber. You know, like you have, even with some of those franchises that have accomplished as little as the Hornets, you know, except for the conference finals thing, right? Like, but maybe not as consistently staying at least close to playoff contention. When you get to those other type of playoff or those other type of franchises, they at least have one. Clearly, this guy is phenomenal. He's one of the best players to ever play in an NBA uniform. The closest we get to that is Zoe, who probably gets some love, very little for 50 greatest players. We'll get some for 75 greatest players as we add more to the historical chain. And that's it. You know, like LaMelo is the next guy that can get added to that list. And to me, to circle this again the same way, what's crazy about it even more so is that it's a pretty easy path for us to see him get there. The accomplishment is what's going to have to happen. That's probably the toughest. We need to get to a conference finals appearance. That's the toughest, and that's team-based, that's team building based. But that's the thing that is going to cement him, right? Like that. Oh, okay. Yeah. This is what truly gets him in that kind of category.
Well, it's the thing, Walker, is it's easy for us to see the path because we see the raw talent. Okay. But LaMelo, because he's young, we have to take that into account. Like these guys that we're talking about, Alonzo, Larry, Kemba. I mean, these guys played years in college and had that development before they hit the NBA, right? With LaMelo, he's so good so quickly, and yet we have to recognize that he's not like out of the box a superstar. There are things that he has to commit to making better in his game in order to achieve the things that he wants to achieve, which I think goes to a certain extent for every player. But so many of these players that we were talking about had worked a lot of that stuff out before they ever got to the NBA. And so that's, it's easy for us to see the path because we see the raw talent. It's not going to be as easy for LaMelo to achieve those things. He's got to commit himself to those things. And, I think he will. And I think this all-star experience is a really important experience for him to have, to see, to be around greatness, to see what it actually takes to achieve the things that he wants to achieve. It doesn't happen automatically. And I think a lot of things for LaMelo, he talks about it. A lot of what he does is instinctual. He can't explain it. Mm-hmm. His whole brand is that he's sort of from outer space, that he's a rare, element. Mm-hmm. But the truth is that, to become great, you have to commit yourself every single season to getting better. And that will be the interesting thing to see if it happens or if it doesn't happen. And if it doesn't happen, how that limits, his ultimate ceiling.
Well, so if we talk about, as we knock on wood while we're discussing this, right, it does seem kind of it's going to happen from my point. And I do want to knock on wood because I want to avoid any disaster. But the things that would derail this, it's injuries. You never wish injuries on anybody, certainly. And we saw that a little bit with LJ. That kind of took place with him. He had I think it was a bad back for LJ, and then he goes to the New York Knicks, and it was a tremendous trade for the Charlotte Hornets. They get Anthony Mason in return. Just one of the many things Bob Bass did that was so great, trying to navigate as a small market team. But Anthony Mason has his lone all NBA appearance with Charlotte, then gets an all-star appearance the next year with the Heat. But you had to move off of LJ, and injuries that took place with him. Zoe wanted out. And they had to get him out of there to get somebody that would play well with another similar star. That's another way this could be derailed as far as franchise goes, because, wanting out isn't going to hinder LaMelo from being a great player in his own right. It's going to hinder him from being a great player with the Charlotte Hornets because he's not going to be wearing that jersey.
But the point is he staked his claim. He staked his claim his rookie season. He's following it up pretty significantly in his sophomore season. And then this All-Star game is another narrative moment that, as a Charlotte Hornets fan, you can hang your hat on and say, okay, in this moment, I'll remember this particular moment, his first All-Star game. He played really, really well. Wasn't the story, but was a story. People were talking about him, and that's step one. And now the hard part is for LaMelo improving his game and, cutting the turnovers, cutting the fouls, being available maturing in those situations.
Yeah. Just like doing the things that 20-year-olds don't do. Right. But he's 20, so it's all about just the natural development. Yeah. And I guess the point I want to kind of end on is that it just feels different here, Doug. Like we were all excited when Kemba would get in because he was ours, right? But we knew that he should have never really be a starter. The one ceiling year for Kemba was getting a selection into the third All-NBA team. And we didn't even expect that to happen, really, but he got in. That was the absolute ceiling that Kemba was ever going to reach, and that's played out in real time. We were all right about that. But clearly should be coming off of the bench for these all-star games, maybe 1 year as a starter, something like that, right? But LaMelo is 20. He's a first alternate, so he gets in immediately. And those guys always get in, by the way, right? Like that's no shot to LaMelo. Every year, the first alternate gets in to be an all-star, so that counts. And you're seeing this happen so early. Like, this guy belongs with the best players in the game. And Kemba, it was like he belongs, but on a second tier. Like, you can see the first tier potential with LaMelo, and like, oh my God, we have one of these. Like, this is different. Other teams have always had at least one. We haven't really had all that much experience on some kind of longer timetable. And this is our potential for the first time since like 2000.
Well, and this is why we always say, like, I don't care how he gets to the All-Star game, first alternate, second alternate, who gives a damn? Because you got to be on the dance floor to boogie. And he got on the dance floor and he boogied hard.
And you
And it makes me believe
really
he could start an All-Star game someday and win MVP. Like that's
That-
my,
that's
that's
the
another
thing.
big takeaway. Like I saw that game and thought, oh, LaMelo can start an All-Star game at some point and he will go for MVP and he'll win it.
What we're talking about are things that are so ridiculously hard to do. Win MVP, I mean, you have to be like a top 50 player right now to do that.
Yeah.
That Derrick Rose is the exception that had his one crazy year. Like everybody else is one of the best players, like to see that there is like a potential to be a first team All NBA player, to at least be some kind of consistent, does he get 5 All NBA appearances in his career? Like that's a ridiculous stat and yet possible for sure. And that's the fun part about having LaMelo a part of the Charlotte Hornets. Excellent weekend for him. Really cool to see as a representative for the Hornets. Now we'll see what he can do the final 22 games with the Hornets as it pertains to team success. Coming up this week, we do want to focus some of these episodes on what these stars, these best players for the Hornets have to do. We'll look at LaMelo again. We'll dedicate an episode to Terry Rozier. We'll dedicate an episode to Miles Bridges, and then maybe have like a leftover episode. We'll focus on Gordon, PJ, maybe
Love
some of the
leftovers.
other. Yeah, leftovers. are
Love
great.
good leftover plate.
Yeah. Oh, Eric Collins, sweet potatoes, right? You want some of those as leftovers, maybe mashed potatoes. Mix them up, but then they'll heat up well. Who's going to heat up well for the Charlotte Hornets the final 22 games of this regular season? Thanks for joining us on the Locked On Hornets podcast. We always appreciate your support. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets. It's your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Nick Carboni going to be joining us tomorrow, so we'll discuss Nick, what the final 22 games might encompass with Nick Carboni coming up tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.